Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It is Hump Day. And today is Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. I am Solid Blue Pizza, and it is Turn to Talk. Welcome, Baa Ram. I would say my co-host for today, but he is the host. I'm just the administrator. And welcome back, Guy, and welcome, Roxy. How are you? And Frankie, sorry, you're number 4 today, but welcome. Okay, so today I am going to give the show over to my friend, Baa Ram, and he chose this topic, and he will be the host. So I'm just the administrator. So Baa Ram, I hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Solid Blue. I hope you're well tonight.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'm honoured to be the host of tonight's show. Hopefully, I do a good job of it. I do have a topic in mind that has been in my phone for a while. Just on I listen to podcasts throughout the day, and sometimes I'll think of a show topic for myself once I start my own show. And I've always thought about government and my beliefs in general. I'm a big conspiracy theorist, but not only that, I'm into politics, I'm into philosophy, and over the past 5 or 6 years, I've kind of got black pilled, and which kind of means that you see through the theatre of government and how it's all how it really runs, and things that we
Okay,
can put
Bob,
in place.
let me interrupt you there for a minute. You're coming in a little muffled.
Oh, okay.
Okay, much better.
Is it? Okay.
Yep.
So there's things I believe that we could do to I think the people, the voters, need to have more of a say. And tonight, I know the main topic would be, should non-parents be allowed to govern? Because I believe that famous saying about having kids is said to change a person. It gives them new perspectives on life. It makes them think about the future more. And ultimately, the people in power, they may have children, but I don't think they are thinking about the future generations that may have to pay back all the debt that they're racking up, the war, their decisions to go into wars. Ultimately, we bear the brunt of it, not them. Not only that, I mean, these people are set up for life financially, and that includes their future generations, their kids and their grandkids. So it made me think more about things that we can put in place. Now I know we could take this topic in different directions, and I'll leave that up to the people that call in, if they do, that we can maybe talk about the term limits. I know that's been mentioned before. Voting online, voter ID, holding them accountable to their manifestos, and one that I've thought about for a long time. And I remember asking my grandfather while he was still alive. This was back in maybe 2017, about referendums. Now I don't know if the American, maybe you can help me out with that, solid blue, but in the UK they're called referendums. I don't know if they're the same over there, where the people get to vote on a certain topic. We had an independent referendum with Scotland and England back in 2014, I believe, when Scotland wanted to become an independent country, and unfortunately, the majority of Scotland voted to stay in the United Kingdom. But those kind of votes don't come around often, and I was asking my grandfather, why is that? That people, for instance, the war just now in Russia and Ukraine, are we going to get to decide whether we join in or not? Because ultimately, I think we should. And I've yet to hear an argument why these referendums don't happen more often. Well, I mean, I could tell you why, but I mean that's besides the point. So, guys, I'm just going to open up the call-in lines if you want to call in and give your opinions, and we'll get the conversation running.
Okay. Frankie asked, "What does being a parent have to what What does being a parent have to do with voting?" And I think she's referring to your. I think you need to go through your about, like, should a non-parents be allowed to govern? And then you said being a parent changes a person.
Yeah, what I meant was not that you have to be a parent to vote, that you have to be a parent to govern, to be a president, a prime minister, a king or a queen, like someone with power. To be honest, the topic is more, to get the conversation rolling on some of the stipulations that we can place on people with power, and being a parent could just be one of them. Um, because I believe people like, let's say, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, all these presidents in the past, that we've gone to war and we've racked up the debt. The debt of America stands at, what is it, $2-3 trillion? That's something that the people are going to have to bear the brunt of. So
Yes,
are
but
they?
I am going to throw this in though. But when Barack Obama gave the reins over, we were, weren't in so much debt as we were in 2020. We are
Yeah.
ridiculously in debt. So let's share the blame.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, it's not about. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant because during Donald Trump's time, he never brought us into any new wars. But I mean that it's not a blame game. It's more just that in general, these politicians bring us into wars, which causes catastrophic debt and destruction and death. And I just believe that if you have children, that it would change you, and obviously it hasn't changed these people, but then again they're not affected. So yeah, I just wanted to see what people had to say about any of these things that I've put forward.
Hey, Chill, welcome. Because on my show, people tend to come in. They tend to come in. So let me bring Chill in. Okay, and Frankie says, hold on. Okay, I have a question about the chat. Okay, she says, "Do you think they care?" And I think she's referring to, and I'm sorry because you know what Frankie's situation is. So I'm trying to kind of
Yeah.
interpret what she's saying. So when you say, "Do you think they care?" Frankie, are you talking about? Do you think the politicians who are in power now care? Is that what you're referring to? Okay, she
Yeah.
says yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, obviously, their children are covered. Like, they're not going to have to go into wars. They're not going to have to pick up the debt. They're probably multimillionaires. They're sorted for life. So, I mean, it's kind of a redundant question in that sense, because clearly they don't care. They're going to bring us into wars and rack up debt, and it's going to be on us. But the conversation could go in different ways. I just wanted to make that point, that some of well, most of our presidents and prime ministers and world leaders, they don't seem to have that empathy for us. And I think that there should be some more stipulations, like I said earlier, the voting online, voter ID, and term limits, and holding them accountable to their manifestos. Because ultimately, throughout my life, in my short time into politics, I've heard so many times of candidates running for presidency or to be the prime minister of the UK, and they tell us that they're going to do this and they're going to do this, and they never do it. And I would say, and this might be extreme, but if you don't follow through on your manifesto, you should be removed from office. Like, no questions asked. There's no 4 years and then we'll see. It should just be, tell us when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, and what that plan will look like. And because we're voting these people in, so I think we should be holding these people more accountable for their actions and their words, than just letting them off.
Okay. I don't want to run your show today, so do you
Yeah,
want
okay.
chill? Do you want
Okay, yeah,
chills?
chill. Yeah, sorry. Chill, well, have you got anything to say to the conversation and what I've just said?
Uh, mm, hey everybody.
Hey,
Hey, bud.
chill.
I can't, y'all really get on my nerves because y'all start off so formal. It gets on my soul. I
I
really want to
know,
tell
I
y'all
know.
right now. It's
Uh,
it's so straight to business. I'm like, okay, let me say hi first because I feel awkward if I
Okay.
just say,
Hello, chill. How are you, dude? What's
yeah,
up?
thank you.
Hey.
I appreciate that. But yeah, so the I came in a little later, and you actually were finishing with the actual topic tail end. But I did hear you mention about the politicians, and I think it's more complex than that. In reference to you said the manifesto, uh, if they don't accomplish what they do in 4 years, it's not like there's two sides to the story in America. So you can only do so much if you don't have the enough the blue people or red people in, right? So that means if you can't get enough blue people in, that means as a group that you're losing. So if you, it's not just the president, it's the whole Democratic Party, right? They have to be successful, and so typically you're not going to get a thing passed and thing done without the numbers in the Senate in the House. And so a president can try to do all he wants, and it just doesn't get be successful because he doesn't have the House or the Senate. He can't get the votes passed. So I mean, that's not necessarily predicated to him as a president, but overall, I don't think that's. I think that's just when we get into those arguments about government and who should. Those are we're chasing our tails, right? Because that's just what it's not even. Those things are done on purpose. They're put in place. It's not like we can really prevent what's happening. They figure out ways to do what they want to do, how they want to do it. And then really what the problem is the system. It's the capitalist system. Some people swear by it, but uh, I mean, so what else? What's the solution, right? I'm not a person that hate when people pose problems and never have no real solutions. So I typically won't dwell on that because I don't necessarily know, or I feel like I'm not in depth enough on government to know what solutions to
mhm,
have. But I do know, that's a thing. We can't when we get into those arguments of why don't we have this, why don't we have change electoral colleges? There's so many wrong things, and if it's so many wrong things, we got to know that's on purpose. It's not a mistake. If the simple Joe Schmo can sit up here and look at that and say, why is that way? That means that
mhm,
it's that way on purpose by somebody who is way more influential than me, and it's been that way for a reason. So, yeah, that's what you got to ask yourself. When it don't make no sense, it's a reason why it doesn't make sense, and actually it does make sense. You just don't like it, but it actually makes sense. It's for somebody to take advantage of that's above your pay grade, and so that those things that the president that they're just they're like pissing in the wind when you have those arguments because it's just the system in general that's the problem.
mhm.
May I ask a
Yeah,
question?
yeah, on you go, solid blue. Yeah.
So either so chill, to say that you don't know much about it or whatever, but actually you do. I mean, because we all have an opinion. We all think that government should be run a certain way. So do you think that people should have a certain background or requirement in order to run? I mean, if just like Zelensky, they said that he used to be a stand-up um, comic or whatever. Should he have been able to
Oh,
run? I mean,
hmm.
and who's
Awesome.
to say that a dog catcher who's someone who was a dog catcher, last week couldn't sit in the White House? I mean, how do we know?
That's a super duper great question. Um, I wish I could remember the quote from the one Andre 3000, or maybe it was Big Boy, somebody from Outkast, when they asked him about, I don't know if it was Sam L was mad. They was telling him about Sam L being mad that that how the musicians were coming in and taking their roles. And he's like, man, what? If you make a song that's jamming, you think I'm not gonna play it? It's like in reference to Sam L. Like if you come out and you make a song that's jamming, I'm gonna listen to it. So if I come in and I make a movie that's fire, why wouldn't you? Why you get mad at me? So if it makes sense, it makes sense, right? I say that all to say because it's you're right, and I do know. It's not that I don't know about or in depth about government. It's just I haven't contemplated enough to to, to know that whole scale plan of what we should do if we X out of capitalist society because you got the other societies which that have their pitfalls. So what? How do you do that? The actual plan, the idea I got there, but the execution of that plan, I haven't thought about it enough. You know what I'm saying? And and to some degrees, maybe I even have, but just forgot, or just like it's not there to where I can explain it enough. So, but overall, I agree. Like there's definitely some teacher, some middle school teacher that is much more qualified than running the country than Joe Biden easily. I can completely agree as far as mentally, like, and that's where it starts at because anything else can be taught. It starts with your mental and your capacity for diplomacy and just a lot of things. But they don't want that in place. People aren't there, or it's all that's on purpose. Oh, that's on purpose, and that's what I'm saying. We can argue all that, but that's the part I think it'd be like, oh, this is a moot point because it's, all that stuff. You're right. There's a people out there way qualified than these politicians. People who have their sons at war right now, veterans, ex-military, that are way more qualified than the George Bush or Reagan or whoever. I mean, it doesn't. It could be an Arnold Schwarzenegger if their IDs are right, or if they're learning right, because everybody has their specialty, right? So I mean, I'm not saying that you can't, you have certain qualifications, but you got to be able to willing to have the process, the mentality to be able to be a leader, to galvanize, to lead, and to make hard decisions and be diplomatic. But that I don't think that's. I mean, that's people who are put in place are there for a reason. So.
Well said. Well said. I've noticed that Michael Key is now on the show. Michael, how are you tonight, bud?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I think that is a good observation. Chilwell just
Mike,
mentioned
what
that
up?
we're pretty formal
Okay.
but when Solid Blue and hey, we're all guilty of it. When I'm asked and we could be on these panels the whole night and not say hello to each other. So that was a great observation there, Chill. I'll try and get better with that one. So Michael, tonight's show, if you can see the topic, and it might be one that we will sway away from. I think we're already swaying away from it already. But this was a topic that I thought of during my research, is that a lot of our world leaders, although they may have children, it seems like they don't have much empathy. They're not thinking about the future generations.
Mhm.
They're racking up debt. They're bringing us into wars.
Yep.
And I'm totally against elitism in general. I don't think that another human being can tell me what I can and cannot do, and all that stuff. And what you'll notice is obviously these families, the Clinton families, the Bush families, the Trump family, they're all set for life. They're all multimillionaires, if not more, and they're not going to bear the brunt of their actions.
Mhm.
So ultimately, although the topic is should non-parents be allowed to govern, I think we could kind of move into other areas such as, before you joined, I also mentioned the voting online, voter ID, term limits, holding them accountable to their manifestos, and maybe more referendums. It's more, we as the voter should be able to have more say and put more stipulations on who can run, and what the criteria is for someone to run. And that was a great question. Before I go to you, Michael, by Solid, where she said you're we've all heard about people say like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson running for president one day, and Kanye West. And I mean, I wasn't around when Ronald Reagan was president, but seemingly he did a decent job. But I just feel, and I know you're going to have people who like Joe Biden and don't, but from what I see, the snippets, and again, I'm guilty of just seeing the snippets, but I just can't believe that out of 330 million people in America, he is the best for the job. and that's what gives me a lot of passion for this kind of thing. So, Michael, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different examples and there's so many different ways you can go with this conversation. But I think one thing, if you're wanting to get better candidates, I heard one, it's a podcast I listened to because I work in finance and investing, in this podcast that they do some options trading. He brought up a pretty good point, because I always thought it was crazy how politicians every year seem to vote on their raises and their income. And a lot of people say, well, they make so much money, and they do make a good living, and a lot of them go in there and they get wealthy. Look at the Pelosi's, the Clintons. They went into the office broke, and now look at what they're worth, right? So you have a lot of people that go in and take advantage of the system. And I always figured term limits is the most important, because that would give you turnover, and that give you new ideas and opinions that come into office, and you wouldn't have people that are so focused on staying in power at that point, which is exactly what you see now. Maybe they got into it for the right reasons, but all it does is become making decisions in the timing of decisions, ultimately only for the purpose of getting votes and remaining in that seat. If you had term limits, then they wouldn't have any reason to do that. That's why I've explained to people, if you noticed, you have a few presidents that get a lot done in the first term, but for the most part, that first term is all about getting to the second term. And when did Obama pass the ACA, which is his biggest piece of legislation? I believe was in the second term. And you see a lot of that where it's always in the second term, because they don't have anything to lose at that point. I am open to looking at this. I don't know if this is the right thing, but I also feel like if you paid them more, like a lot more, you would make that position more attractive, and you could potentially, in theory, eliminate a lot of the corruption that you see in Washington with these people going out and doing things like insider trading or war. Because a lot of, look at the Cheneys, right? And the Bushes, a lot of that, they made a lot of money off of that stuff. So, and again, I don't know if it would work. It's just in theory, because it was kind of like, goes back to, I don't whoever in here watches the NBA, but the NBA used to have a big problem with the refs gambling, and the refs got paid maybe, I don't know, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year at that point to dictate the outcome of a game being played by guys making multi-millions of dollars. And since they weren't being paid a lot, they said, well, we can control the outcome of these games, and we're going to bet on it and make money that way. So one of their solutions was to pay them more and try and eliminate that. Again, I don't know if it would work, but it could be something to look at. But then you crack down on, and you make sure that they are more than held responsible for any kind of flaw in corruption that is shown. I don't know. There's so many different theories on how you could get better candidates, but to get better candidates, you need to make that position more attractive, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you notice, this is something I'll ask, and I'll try and ask it without sounding too, tinfoil hat conspiratorial, but do you guys, you guys are all American. You guys have been around for longer than me. Do you notice the whole, like, how the Clinton family's been around for a long time, the Bushes, all the, Jed Bush and the other one, they've ran for president, and the Trump family, it seems like a big, yeah, the Kennedys, there you go. They're it's like, and okay, I'll just say it. Like, when I said at the start, I'm black pilled, I believe that these families, they're all related. Like, there's people who believe that George Bush and Barack Obama are like seventh cousins, and that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are cousins as well. And, I believe that is the case. So for me, it's like, it is a one big cabal, and they're all just like having their turn. Joe Biden has been in office for what, 47 years, and then he gets his turn, and it seems like the power is kept within, and whether they are related or not, it does seem like a big cabal, and that that is why I believe that the term limits and all these stipulations that I'm talking about will never happen. But hypothetically, we can all sit here and have a good conversation about the things that we would like to see, and you never know, one day that it might happen. But have you guys ever noticed anything like that? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
It showed in the. Oh, go ahead, Blue Sol.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, if you had term limits, okay, just saying what you just said, about the Bushes or whomever, um, wouldn't that mean that even if you had a term limit, wouldn't that mean, like, okay, so George Bush, he did two terms, and then he encourages one of his daughters to run, and then she does her terms, and then they encourage the other daughter to run, and then she does her term. Then by that time, one of the grandkids could be 18 or 21, and then they encourage their child to do their term. So wouldn't that still be able to keep
Yeah.
that within the family?
You can't.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys talk, but I have a good example for this that you guys would be interested in.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Michael.
So, kind of what we're seeing now. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book "Why Nations Fail," but I strongly suggest you do. It's a very good book, and it goes through a whole bunch of examples that the authors these economists and went to these countries and studied what made things like the Roman Empire or North Korea or the Soviet Union and all these countries that have failed, that were these big powers. But the one that stuck out to me was the Venetian Empire in Venice. I think they were after the Romans. It could have been before, but they had a system very similar to ours, and it ended up working out exactly like what Solid Blue Sister just said. So regardless of whether or not you agree with the Electoral College or the voting bill that they were trying to pass for the voter rights and all that stuff, if you actually look at what the voting bill is trying to do, it's very geared towards one side, because for the majority of the population in the United States, they're Democrats. So if we went to a popular vote or a majority vote, then the Democrats, if not every time, they would have a very, very, very good chance of always being elected. And it's small little increments that they implement to try and stay in power. Well, the Venetian Empire did something very similar, and they implemented legislation that allowed these people to stay in power, even though they were elected officials, but they made it also to where they could control who was going to fill in for them, and it ended up being people like family members and higher ups that they were friends with and stuff, and that's what ended up basically leading to their downfall. The exact same situation that Solid Blue Sister said. Now, could you completely get rid of that even if we had term limits? No, you still will, because just by the freedoms, you can't say, well, your dad ran so you can't run, right? But I think one thing that you could do is you make it to where we don't allow career politicians to run for office. Politics is not supposed to be a career. And especially in the United States, when we came out with the Constitution and this new form of government, when you are elected to be president or a senator or a representative or something along those lines, it is a public service that you do after you serve time in the private sector. It was not supposed to be a career. But now we have people who, they come out of college, they do an internship with a politician, and all of a sudden they're in politics and they work their way up. Pelosi did this, Biden did this, Bernie Sanders did this. They've never worked a private sector job in their life. And that separates them from reality and from the population. And this is on both sides. That's why you hear you hear people and they talk about things. The only thing they're good at and the only thing they offer our country is how to manipulate other sides and get votes and try and pass bills. But then when you're looking at some of the bills, Republican, Democrat, whatever, you're like, this is so separated from the regular everyday person. Have you ever tried to call a politician? You go on there and it has a general hotline. You got to call their office. I went and emailed mine the other day about the vaccine mandates that Joe Biden was trying to do. And this is a Republican and a highly touted Republican representative. And it really aggravated me when I saw his reply, because I emailed him, and in my email, I said, look, not only is forcing employees to get the vaccine not right, but the other side of this, the coercion side, where they're saying, well, if you don't get the vaccine, then we're going to make you take a COVID test every week. And that ultimately led to these businesses charging the employee to take that test. And because the employee and those tests were like $100, $150, that's a week. So someone who's a lower income person, was not going to be able to eat the costs of getting tests every week. What does that mean? They either, if they want to keep their job, go get vaccinated, or they have to go find another job and they're out of work. And I told him this. And in his response, he sent me a letter. And in his letter, he said, I've been in contact with Joe Biden, or we have been trying to get in contact with the Biden administration about how it's wrong to make people get vaccinated, blah, blah, blah. We have suggested that he revert to, weekly testing. And I responded to him. I was so, I don't want to cuss on the show because it's a good show. I was so aggravated. I responded and I cussed in the email. And I said, you completely missed what I just said. I said,
So quick, Mike, real quick,
Yeah.
Mike. Like, so you meant you pissed because you just, like, that's what that was the problem. I just sent you the problem, and that's one of the problems. And so you just, got you. I want to make sure I was.
Yeah, because there are two problems. I had a problem with the entire mandate that was put out by the Biden administration, right? And I thought that maybe my representative that was representing me, who I had voted for, also felt the same way. Hopefully, he's a fellow Republican. Not only, I also sent him the article I wrote on this in the study and how it was actually going to disproportionately impact lower income people, but the Black communities, the minority communities who fill a lot of these low income jobs, and they're the very people that the Biden administration said that they were going to try and benefit and help prosper and protect, but now they're putting them out of work. But when I sent it to him, he sent me a generic letter, and in there it showed that not even the people who agree with me and on my side, the Republicans who I affiliate with, even understood the entire point, because they just think that people are looking at, oh, well, you have to get vaccinated. No, it's not just getting vaccinated. It's if you don't get vaccinated, you actually have to pay to get the test. And that's an even bigger problem. And he was actually suggesting to the Biden administration that we allow them to pay for that test. Like we make them get the test instead of getting vaccinated. And I'm like, dude, you completely missed the point. And when you look back at some of these people's history, there you think that, oh, I'm going to read that letter. Oh, well, he's on my side because he's against me being forced to get vaccinated. And that's not true. But they don't work in your best interest a lot of times. There's a big separation. And there's an even larger separation when they've never, ever worked with everyday people in their life.
Yeah. That was a great point, and I've wrote that down on my list, and I've got my computer desktop open. The one about I think they should have to have a job for a few years, and you said private sector. I would even say public sector. They should be able to work with people, real people, and see the struggles that we go through, because these people in power, it's like they're just so disconnected from us. Their lives are so different. And they'll never understand. So, I'll definitely check out that book. We have a question in the chat that I wanted to get to. I kind of think it was already answered a bit. It was Frankie when she asked, do you think term limits will help our countries get better? So I think, I think Michael did mention that, term limits. And what I was going to ask Michael is, with that Venetian, the downfall, ultimately it's the people that vote. So how did that end? Or I maybe should just read the book and not spoil it for myself. But ultimately, we still have the vote. So if Donald Trump's daughter or Michelle Obama, let's say, was to run, ultimately we are the voters. So it's supposed to be in our hands, but I don't know if it really is. So yeah, so I'll move back to Solid Blue and see what you've got to say. Solid?
Yep, hold on. I'm muting myself. Okay.
Okay.
What Michael said, I agree with. It makes a lot of sense. But when you start talking about people of color, I agree and I disagree, because I think that I'm trying to say this where it comes out the right way. We're just different. When people look at us, we are just different. And today, there was some text going back and forth between me and some of my friends, and we're talking about the war in the Ukraine. And I even sent a tweet on this yesterday, that it seems like we're so invested on the war in the Ukraine that these politicians will get on board, with certain things. But you look at something like Haiti, or things dealing with people of color, if there's any issues, or any uh any wars, or if anybody wants to, a person of color wants to come over here, and they want to seek asylum or something, for the most part we're pretty much always turned back. But if you have someone who comes from a quote unquote Christian country, and you're the right color, then politicians just seem to jump on the bandwagon. So when it comes to vaccines and what have you, um, we're always screwed. I mean, we're screwed with vaccines. We're screwed with voter IDs, mainly because people of color, a lot of them, the majority of them, are poor, and poor people have a hard time paying for IDs, paying for medical care, and what have you. And I think no matter who the politician is, for people who look like me, I'll always be second class. So that's all I have to say on that. So.
Okay, I'll jump in there for a second. I didn't actually catch what Michael said about people of color. Were you meaning the voter limits and voter ID? Because I know there is talk around, voter ID being racist, and I haven't actually looked into that. But to push back on what you say, and we've all said that we need to be a bit more, combative. I would say that what you've just said, saying that people of color are more likely to be poor. I mean, I wouldn't say that's a definitive, like that's not definitive. I think there's a lot of white areas in America, a lot of white areas in the world that are very poor, and there are ways to help that. It's not like, oh, if you don't have access to a laptop or a computer, then your voting rights being taken away. There are obviously going to be public libraries and things, and they will make ways for us to vote. I don't see how you can include what's happening now with vaccine passports and things, but not do it with voting. It seems kind of
Well,
hypocritical.
well, okay, but this is what is the hypocrisy comes in, where 20 years ago voter ID was never an issue. You just go vote, whatever. 30 years ago, you just go vote. Then all of a sudden, the country starts to turn it starts to get darker, and people are starting to vote. That particular group of people are starting to vote a certain way. All of a sudden, it's like, oh well, we have fraud. These people are going and they're doing this and whatever. We want voter ID. It was never an issue before, and it still isn't. But when you go look at and you see some people who go to get an ID, and they have to have a birth certificate, you have a lot of people in a lot of poor areas who don't have that, who were born in places where especially down south, where a lot of births in black areas were not recorded the same way, or if they were, things were burned. Back during the civil rights, there were so many records of black people that were intentionally burned. So those people cannot go and get a birth certificate because they don't have it. So that means that they can't vote. So yes, there are poor white people, but a poor white person will always have a leg up over a poor Black person. And that's a fact. So that's what I mean when I say, why is it so hard? But the hypocrisy comes in because all of a sudden people are voting a certain way, and all of a sudden it's like, you need to have an ID. You need to have this. I didn't need it 20 years ago. Why do I need it now?
But before I jump to Will, I'll just make one point on that is the whole voter ID for me, and this is from someone from the UK, and that conversation isn't here, but from the outside, I see that as how fair can that is the fairest way ever, like for me, and I know what you've just said aside. I'll use the analogy of sport. We have VAR in the UK. I don't know if you guys do, where if there's a decision that the referee doesn't spot, the referee can then go to the cameras and check it. And there's a big debate whether it's made football worse to watch or if it's a good thing. And I've always stood on the that it's a good thing, because ultimately, if you're offside or if the ball crosses the line, it's a goal and it's offside. Even if it's an inch offside, it's offside. If it's over the line, it's over the line. You know what I mean? So for me, although there are these problems, and I would say what you've just said lies at the feet of the government. It's their job is to literally look after us, keep us safe. And if there are those things, which I don't doubt, that's their job to fix it before they implement the voter ID. But I really can't see, unless I'm missing something. I'll let you back in as well after I go to Chill and Michael. But having voter ID online would be the most fairest way, and it would prove the winner, because you could probably check up, your voters registered, your name's there, who you voted for, and there's no chance of, what we've heard in the last few years with stolen elections and all the collusion and things. That all that would have to go, because you have proof, you have definitive proof. I've also heard about people that are deceased are voting still, things like that. That would all be taken away if you implemented this. So yes, I know there is problems, and I would say again, it's not my fault or your fault or anyone on this panel's fault. It's the government's fault. They would need to sort those things out before they implemented it. But ultimately, I would think it's a good thing. So I will come back to you, but I'll go to Chill first, and then I'll come back to you.
Check 1, 2, 3. Hold on, man. Okay, I was just making sure because I got a couple phone calls and yeah, cool. So it was interesting. I think I don't know. I think I got kind of lost in the shuffle in reference to like about. I think I don't know if necessarily Michael necessarily said black people. I think he said poor people and how the vaccine mandates can disproportionately affect their communities. And that's beyond just black folks. That's everybody. That's poor people in general. But when we do say minorities, we speak in how it disproportionately affects in percentage wise, right? Mm-hmm. So because there are, like Bob said, you're right, there are poor white people, but in America, if 30% of the white folks are poor, and in America, 75% of the black folks, all the black folks are poor, that's a problem. And when you put in policy that affects them, that means that's going to affect disproportionately a whole group, because obviously that most black people in America are, are under whatever the case situation it is, and that's discrimination. That's discriminatory, and that's when that's an EEO issue, and that's why how people like Thurgood Marshall became famous, because he kind of maneuvered, especially in a racist period of time. He learned how to maneuver the system against themselves. But those staples, those people in society are, and this is what you kind of come in by as like a conspiracy theorist. They're channeled out. They're attacked. They're figured, like, their history is attacked. When you become a figure like that, the FBI already put it in place. Like Hoover put it in place how to attack that type of stuff. Like, listen, this guy's getting too powerful. He's not in politics. He's not under our thumb. So let's go get him. You know what I'm saying? Let's go get him. He's a cheater. He's a liar. It's everything except what he's trying to accomplish. And who he is might have been 10, 20 years ago. Let's go get his emails from 10 years ago. Let's go get his tweets from 20 years ago. Let's attack this person so people can be swindled out of, his influence. And so typically, you know, that's a hard. I say all that to say because we don't have those people like the Thurgood or just those staples in community that are just widely known to fight against the system in that type of way. That's a part of the system because it's a hard life, and then they see you coming, they kind of X you out early now. So those things are easily put in place, like a vaccine mandate, because it was ridiculous, especially when it used to be, at least initially, but we're going to give you the negative test first. But then, who's going to supply those tests? But that government started supplying. I don't think it's like that for most people, but it is ridiculous. You're basically you're giving me no choice but to abide by your system, which is that you meet prima facie a lot of times that those systems and those need to be called out. But if it's an executive order, then it doesn't matter because I can call it out and get a stay or injunction, I should say, in the courts, but it may take me a year or 2 or 3 to do that, being held up in court. So it don't matter because it's executive orders. Donald Trump did it. Joe Biden doing it now. And they both do it. And I think, like, Mike, you make some great points, bro. And I kind of swear to goodness, bro, you're not a Democrat or Republican sometimes. You just making sense, bro. And that, I promise, that's an independent thought process. So and sometimes I know you identify with conservatism, but like, bro, it's not a conservative thought. That's just common damn sense. You know what I'm saying, bro? That's just regular smart person's intellect. That ain't got nothing to do with red or blue. So yeah, bro. Yeah, I'll shut up.
There you go, Michael.
Oh no, and Solid Blue, I completely understood what you're saying. I'm gonna hit on something that you brought up in the beginning of when you were talking, but going back to like what I said, like with the vaccine mandates and how it disproportionately affects certain communities. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about yesterday with the statistics. Remember, we talked about me being a numbers person. The first thing I went and looked at, because that exact order, he said all the federal civilian executive branch employees had to be vaccinated. And when you think of what the executive branch is, that's all your postal workers. That's I can't remember the exact number of how many people, but I do know that, the Black population in the United States is between 12 and 14%, but they make up 18 to 19% of the executive branch workforce.
Or the government. I'm sorry, but it's even more. It's probably 50 over the government, because I am a government worker.
Yeah.
I work for.
The state and federal are separated. I wasn't even counting the
I was
state
thinking
employees.
federal.
I was
thinking federal.
Yeah.
It's even more over just totality beyond executive.
Oh, it could be. This is what I got off the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The other thing too is when I get my data, I try to go straight to the government websites, especially when it's a government issue. And so, but I found 18%. And when you look at vaccination rates among the Black community, this was on December 13th, I think it was, when they had last recorded. It was either just below or just over 50% of the Black community was vaccinated. So when I went and I added up all the numbers of vaccination rates and then, demographics of the government workforce, I'm like, it is going to overwhelmingly impact the Black community more than anyone else that are government workers in a negative way by doing this. And it was even so much so, and I wrote a whole article on this and did a couple shows on it, that it was like, how can this administration not even realize the impact that it's going to have on their own workforce? And it's not that it's the workers' fault, because I know I've been, aware. I've done some reading, and I heard from people. There are reasons why Black people were skeptical about the vaccine. There's reasons why a lot of people are skeptical about the vaccine. That's fine. That is their choice. If they don't want to take it, and that's how it should be. And it was just something I had pointed out, and it's also something that, because I had written on it and studied it a little bit, that I sent off to my own congressman, and just wanted to bring that up. But because you never heard about that on the news. You never heard about that on the news. And then going back to the first thing that Solid Blue Sister said, as far as, with Haiti and wanting to come here, seeking asylum and things like that, there was I don't know if you guys remember this. I can't remember what it was last year. I can't remember the month, but remember when you saw on the news, if you ever watched Fox, I don't know if CNN showed this, but there was Haiti had a bad earthquake last year. And right afterwards, there was a bridge over there on the southern border coming out of Mexico that had I can't remember, 50,000 people under this bridge. They were living in a dump. They had tents, they had trash everywhere because they were being held under this bridge, not allowed into the country. And when you look, what it was Haitians that had gone to Mexico and tried to come up through the southern border, probably because they knew that how many people were coming up through the southern border and being allowed into the country. Well, they never stopped allowing, the Mexicans coming across the country, but they held the Haitians under this bridge and sent them back. They didn't let any of them. I don't think they processed any of them. If they did, they processed them and sent them back. Now, everyone knows I'm against illegal immigration, but I did not like, and I think this plays right into what Solid Blue Sister was saying, that if you're going to allow it, why would you hold this demographic, okay, and not the other one? Well, that's because if you look at statistics, because they also don't allow Cubans to come over either, right? They were stopping them because Cubans were also a part of this group. Well, Trump won the Cuban vote for one. Now, I don't think he won the Haitian vote. He may have gotten a lot of the Haitian votes because I'm from the area in Southwest Florida and grew up. I mean, most Black people I knew growing up were all Haitian or Jamaican or Bahamian, right? And Trump won a lot of that area and those demographics, but he didn't win the Mexican vote. That's why I'm saying, do you really think that politicians that say, oh, we want open borders and people to come across are doing it because they truly care about those people? No, they care about those votes. And that's just my belief. I think that it's all about intent. A lot of these people that say we're going to do good things are only doing good things because they want the vote that keeps them in the office. That's why half the good things that they preach and promise never really get done, whether you agree with them or not, right? And
Yep.
I think that was a great example, if you guys go back and look at that and who the actual demographics was of those people that were being held under that bridge, because you've never seen Mexicans being held under the bridge and trash and stuff like that. You always see them coming across and they immediately run into a border agent. And I don't know, it could be they are let in or sent back, who knows, but they're not sitting there for weeks on end, in a dump in trash and stuff like that. And so there is a difference. And I think that, I do not, like I said, I do not support the illegal immigration thing at all. But I'm also not in support of we're going to treat you different than these people, right? If you're going to send them all back, send them all back. If you're going to let them in, let them in. But don't, but that was a good example that I thought of when she brought up that point.
Okay, very well said. And the next thing I've got on my list to, add to the stipulations that we could talk about is in the UK we have referendums, and I did ask this, and I'll pass it around the room. If that's a word that you guys are familiar with, in the UK, referendums is where we get to vote on a certain issue, a topic, and they don't happen often. We had an independent vote in 2014 for Scotland to leave England or the UK, where the whole country gets to vote. I believe that these referendum style things could happen more often, especially in the case of war. Do the people get to decide whether America join the war with Ukraine and Russia? I think they should, because ultimately it's these people that will be impacted by it. And I'm just wondering why they don't. I mean, I know why, but I'm just wondering, do you guys have that? Have you ever had that? And what's your opinion on having more referendums, more votes, more say on issues like war and maybe even like climate change deals and like things that impact tax and things? So Solid, I'll let you go first.
Okay. In California, we have propositions where we're able to vote on various issues. I think it's a good thing. The only thing that I don't like is when propositions come around, I don't think people are really aware of what is going on, and they don't really do their research or whatever. And when they do vote, they'll just check a box or they'll just skip over it. So I think that more work needs to be done on letting people know what issues are out there for them to vote on. But whether it's a proposition or a referendum, I think definitely the public should be able to vote.
Okay. And just on that, you mentioned there, the people that are voting aren't doing their research, and you're right. And it just made me think about, even Michael kind of touched on it without saying it, but didn't America lower the age of voting to like 16, or was that just talked about? Because to me, that is another sign of, I mean, I without sounding too, I mean, it sounds quite intolerant, but like, do you really want 16-year-olds voting on who runs the country? Because they don't know much at that point, or I mean, maybe some do, but yeah.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah,
I
go
know
for it.
probably about 10 years ago, I had heard some chatter about lowering the voting age to 16, but then that was like, nope, nope, nope. But one thing that I will say about propositions, and I know when this show is published, I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but some people know my stance on it. One thing about the propositions that I didn't like in California, and one of them was about gay marriage, or I guess the proper term is same sex, and it didn't pass. It was pretty much voted down, and I was one of the people who said no. I do not believe in same sex marriage, but there was so much public pressure that it got reversed. And now in California, you have same sex marriage. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to have people vote on a referendum and what have you, then it should stick. Just because, people go and they want to, change the law. Okay. But do it the next time that is up for a vote. Do it on the next cycle of voting, which is usually every two years for something, but don't just, you pass this and then people will get pissed and then you change it. If you're going to change it, wait until it's the next cycle and put it back onto the ballot.
Yeah.
And just before I jump to Chill, how long ago was that? When was the last time you guys had a proposition?
We have propositions in California like every time there's a vote, there's something that somebody wants. So we pretty much have them every 2 years.
Okay, Chill. Well, are you there? Okay, well, we'll skip to Michael and we'll go back to Chill.
So I like this topic because I think a lot of people, this is where I believe that education about how our government works is crucial, right? Now, I think I know exactly what Solid Blue is referring to. So we do have those same type of referendums you're talking about at the local level, right? You, like she said, it was something along the lines with gay marriage, probably in the state of California, or even maybe at a smaller portion, like maybe in her county or her city, right? So we do have those at the local levels. But as far as the national level, what people don't understand, and much of the world may not understand as well, is we're a republic. We're not a democracy. That's why it's always a joke to me when you hear all politicians, Republican, Democrat, whatever, talking about, oh, we need to protect our democracy and all this stuff. We need to do things to, ensure democracy. It's completely different. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic, which means that the reason why we vote, we actually don't directly vote for president. We vote for electorates that will go and represent us to vote for president, right? And sometimes, very rarely, and when they do, it's usually a big problem. Those electorates may not make the vote that they're supposed to. But we know, at least everyone should know, that when you go to vote for president, you're electing someone to represent you, just like you're electing a senator or a House of Representative to represent you as well on the state and local level in Congress. Why? Because we don't have the time to go and go to Washington and take a vote, or we don't have time to buy into all these issues. Like what Solid Blue Sister said, there's a lot of people that didn't research what that vote was supposed to be. And that's true, because a lot of people are working. They have so many things going on in their life. How, if you weren't, let's say you were someone, and I'm just going to say it, who was gay trying to get married, how important was that vote for you to go participate in? Most people probably didn't see it as something worth going to vote for. Now, there are people like Solid Blue Sister said she voted, and a lot of people do vote, but you wouldn't have the same turnout. But this also goes up to the national level. We vote for people to represent us and make those decisions for us. And that's how it works. So I think if you start doing the referendums on the larger levels, you then turn us more into a democracy, which in the United States in particular, with our sheer size alone and the way that our demographics are, where you generally have the majority of your populations in the cities, and but you have a large rural population as well, you would lose all representation for the people that are living outside the cities. And that's why we do what we do and don't have those referendums, because if you turn anything into a popular vote, then you have about 13 different cities total, all pretty much lying on the coastal U.S., that would decide and determine every piece of legislation or action that the United States is taking without any any care about what the people in the middle U.S. Have to say, which is why a republic works out so great for us, because it gives everyone a weighted equal representation in Congress.
So the Republic thing, I'm actually not aware of. I mean, I've heard that in the passing while I've been doing research, but I've never actually looked into what the difference is between a republic and a democracy. Is that what you're saying? Is that the whole college electorate where like America split into all the states, and they take points rather than population vote?
Yeah, that's why we don't.
Oh, okay.
That's why Clinton won the popular vote against Trump.
Yeah, yeah.
George Bush also lost the popular vote against Gore. I can't remember, but it's happened a couple times. But the reason that is, and the reason why we don't go out the popular vote, is because that way you would have, the stockbrokers in New York telling the farmers in Iowa what's best for them. And they all have each state has a different economy. They have a different demographic of people, right? They have a different, it's just everything's different. And it's not good if you have, the people in the cities, because, the movie producer in LA has no idea what the farmer needs in the flyover states, or even how to operate that economy, right? They're good at their thing, and these people are good at theirs. And that's why you have that electoral college, because that just gives more representation to the people, the minority groups in the U.S.
Yeah. I mean, just to add my 2 cents, and I think that makes sense, because I think I heard you could have maybe 3 or 4 states, like your California, Texas, and maybe one other could basically vote for Democrat, and the rest of America could vote Republican in those 3 states because of the amount of people they could win. Yeah. So by the amount, so it does make sense to have the college electorate, and I've yet to hear that debate could maybe happen another time, but yeah.
Can I make a point?
Oh.
Can I just add one thing about the Electoral College? But when the Electoral College first started, you have to remember it was 13 states that came together to build something, whatever. And because there were 13 states, they did it in a way where the population was not as vast in America as it is now. But to me, the Electoral College, you either have to redo it or just get rid of it, because electoral college, when again, like I said, when it first started, it was to represent a certain amount of people in each state. At that time, it was only 13. Since then, we're now at 50, and we have millions of people. So I kind of disagree with you, Michael.
I think it's the one thing that is so again, the one thing I think is just so great about our Constitution, okay, is, was it perfect when it began? No, but it's actually written in such a way that it can be evolved on. Like, we know that Black people weren't allowed to vote at first, and women weren't allowed to vote at first. In fact, I believe for you to be able to vote, you had to be a landowner, and a white landowner at that initially, right? But the Constitution has allowed for legislation and it to be altered in a way that starts including all those demographics. But the same thing with the Electoral College, it's all relative as well, because just because you have more population and more states, that actually, in my opinion, shows it means that the Electoral College has actually grown relevance, because it's more important because you have so many more people. And there's so many different jobs and markets and economies and all of that. That's why I think, you can make the argument that when we had the 13 states, that still the majority of people, lived in urban or rural communities and farmed for themselves, provided for themselves, except for the some cities like the Philadelphias and New York and all that. But it was created to give those farmers the representation. It still holds true today, no matter how big you grow. And so that's because it's still all about representation. And since the majority, and it's, you can go back and look how many registered Democrats live in LA, how many registered Democrats live in Atlanta. If you look at every election, very rarely, I think Oklahoma City, maybe a few cities in there, even Nashville goes blue for the most part. And if you allow those major population centers that are always one-sided in voting to determine the outcome of the popular vote in a presidential election, you lose all representation for the people that are doing, in the urban area, or not urban, rural areas, the farms and all that stuff. I just think it's all relative. It doesn't matter. I think it's actually more important to have the Electoral College. The bigger you get and the more populated you get.
Do you want to provide a rebuttal, Solid, before I jump to Chill?
No, I just said good point or true. So
Okay.
he has made some good
Chill.
points.
Oh yeah,
Chill, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Oh,
Yeah.
my bad. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack since I haven't said anything, but in general, I meant to say this: judges need terms as well. I know it's from earlier. I do think I'm not Democrat or Republican, but I think Republicans are way more smarter than Democrats because they know how to get their agenda across. And the same thing Mike says, they're career politicians that just know how to manipulate. I think Republicans are way better at that because they are the minority and they just outsmart at every turn. So it's that and that electoral college is one. That's one way to do it. Because whatever you said in that part, Mike, that none of that made sense. Like that, you can't represent a whole nation of people and then represent the minority instead of the majority. That's not there's no Democrat, Republican, or whatever. Not just yeah, you can account for them, but I don't care where you at. The majority is the majority, and to give the problem is with the electoral college. It's not even it's the thought of it is cool, but it's that each electoral area doesn't hold the proper amount of votes, and you don't even know how they got these amount of electoral
It's based off population.
weights, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, right, it's based. That's what they say though. I can't. I still when I used to go through this stuff in college, and I would go. It doesn't make. I can't get into it now because I can't remember it. But that none of it makes sense. Like it's and then when it's time to maybe reduce or add, it goes all to shit. Like it's all like whenever it's trying to even the Constitution change, it takes a act the Congress times 10 to do any of these things. And I would say the Constitution, the reason why it's not great is because we have to go and change it in the first place. They didn't take these people into account. There's nothing great about having to put women in the Constitution, put blacks in the Constitution. There's nothing great about that at all. It was built on a fallacy. So, I mean, it's great that we can do it, but there's nothing great about it that had to be done in the first place. So, and so these are tactics elitists do to gain, just to have stay in power, and that us as the bottom people support them in, and we don't even know if we're supporting their corrupt causes in these thought ideologies, because the basic ideology is perfect, but when you make it so hard to even change the electoral areas, as far as especially in Ohio, this whole place, then nobody living there no more. Why they still got 5-6 electoral votes? And then it comes to census. Then the census is all screwed up. But when it's one person's way, the other person gonna call it the other person. It's vice versa. Like no one, like you said, voter suppression wasn't a thing until the Democrats was about to run the table for another 8 years. So now the Republicans are, because they benefited way more than from voter suppression than any demographic ever in life. I mean, for the last 30 years. So I'm thinking to myself, this is all crazy, and these people are all crazy. Overall, the ideologies are awesome. It's just the manipulation of them is what the problem is. Because go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I mean, I think so. You're making a good point that I wanted to hit on, actually, and I think I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with this. This is something I actually read on recently and learned a lot about. Okay, because I was looking into voter suppression and all that stuff. There is a form of voter suppression that does take place that I didn't know all that much about, but it's not in the form of the presidential election. In fact, it has very little impact on the presidential election.
Right.
What it does
cities and
impact
states
is your Senate and not even your Senate, but your representatives, because they have districts in the state, right?
Councilmen, Senate, mayors, which are even more important in some cases, you could say, right?
But really at the local levels, but really the representatives of the state. So it's called gerrymandering. And I don't know if any of you guys have heard that term.
Oh yeah.
Right. And that's where they go and they constantly do the redistricting. Now, both sides do this. Okay. It's all dependent on who's in power, but they redistrict things and they draw these districts up that are crazy instead of just keeping them, how they should be. Right. And when they redistrict these maps, they do it in such a way that, because it's all about the popular vote in that district. So we're going to redistrict this map that cuts, the black community in half, and 75% of it is then made up by the white community, right? When if you just left it how it was in even portions, you would have had a 50-50, or maybe one side had a simple majority or the other. Okay. And what it does is when you redistrict these, I'm just trying to keep it simple. I'd have to draw it for you.
I'm with you. I'm following though.
Right. Then the minority group, whoever that may be, when I say minority, I'm talking about the minority voters, not minority demographic. Okay. The minority votes are actually useless at that point, because if you redistrict something, if you have a 50-50 split, Republican Democrats, but then you start drawing these crazy lines through this district and you capture more Democrats than Republicans, and let's say you have 10 Democratic voters and 2 Republicans now, then the Republican votes are suppressed. They don't matter because it's not going to have any say. Same thing goes vice versa, and they constantly are redistricting this stuff, and that's where this really needs to go and be looked into, right?
Not only that though, Mike, they're moving voters like you don't vote here no more. You did it. That was the last 8 years.
That's what that's all about. Yeah.
So that it's a lot of tactics that go into that, and you're absolutely accurate with that. And that's been happening to the black community forever, though. As far as you had to be able to sign your name on this vote. If you can't sign your name, we want, if you're not learned. If you can't go to school and can't read, how can you sign your name? So you can't vote.
But even that, you
can't get no social security card.
Yeah, but even if you did all that, you could let everyone vote, but when they go and they redistrict it doesn't matter who places a vote, they can suppress the votes, even though they count the votes, right? But it has no influence. There's no really, It's
Exactly.
like, what's the point of me going to, if all of you guys were hardcore liberals and I'm the only conservative on the panel, right? 3 against 4, and we're going to take a vote on something, I'm going to lose every time, right? So that's where that redistricting does need to be looked into. I do believe that. And we're all aware, we're seeing it now, regardless of who is in office as a president, because that redistricting doesn't matter for the presidential election. But it's hard for them to get anything done if they can't work with the Senate and the representatives. And because the Senate and the representatives, the main thing when we created our Constitution was we wanted a very limited executive branch, which is the president. We want to limit his power as much as possible, and the majority of the power is going to be given to the Senate and the representatives, and then we're going to have the Supreme Court to make sure that it's legal on any of the stuff that they're doing.
But I feel like they have the most power, though.
Yes, that's why
the Supreme Court has
well,
the most power. Period.
the Supreme Court is just kind of a yes or no deal. Obviously, they're analyzing all the
It's huge and that's I got you. But it's a huge and yes or no, and it's definitive when they make a decision, and it can set precedent. So they're the most dangerous. Which it went from being politicians or like red against blue. So let's make sure the elitists have the judges.
Yeah.
So because they're gonna make sure that that's what's gonna go.
And just a small fact, I don't know if anyone was aware of this. Did you know that you don't even have to be a judge to serve on the Supreme Court? You don't even have to be a lawyer.
Wow.
Anyone can serve.
I never knew that.
I don't think it's ever happened. If it has, it's very, very, very rare, but you don't have to be in law or a judge to serve on the Supreme Court. That just happens to be who they put in there.
But once again, that's because when you look at the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, whatever, when it was written way back then, a lot of people who were citing, who signed the Constitution, whatever, they were farmers. They were not lawyers. They were not, it was basically farmers. So yeah.
Yeah. This has been really, I'm listening with intent and I'm understanding a lot of it, but a lot of it, I'm going to have to, look into the whole, how America's set up with our voting. But it's been really informative for me. Hopefully it is for the people listening as well, but it's obviously because I'm from the UK and we don't work like that. It's just the popular vote wins it. But I mean, even if some of the things that Michael was pointing out there and Chill and even Solid Blue, you're pointing out flaws in the system, and you're pointing out things that are kind of wrong. Well, in fact, they're really wrong. Demographics and minorities are being hard done by there. And if you guys, and not to, this isn't a dig at the intelligence of you guys. It's actually more if you guys can work that out, the government know what they're doing, and they're preying on these things, and they're not changing them to suit their own agendas. And when you come from where my stance is, and everyone knows my stance, it's the system is set up to favor those people, and they're not going to change things if it affects their well-being and their money, their corruption. It's so obvious. And I mean, I've said this before on my show. I've never voted, because by the time I got into politics, I was, what was I, about 27, 28, and I'd never voted. And I went to vote for the independence, Scotland to leave England. And on the week that the vote was happening, I was actually down in England, and I couldn't vote in England. I had to vote in my hometown. So I couldn't vote, and I'm kind of glad, because it's kind of something I'm proud of. And I know a lot of people will disagree. And I know, Solid, you've pulled me up before by saying, look, we have a right to vote, and I'm going to do everything I can to exercise the right, and more power to you. But I just could not vote, not after what I know, knowing, like, with my beliefs, I think it's a corrupt system. I think presidents are selected, not elected. I think it's one big movie. It's theater, and and the things that you guys are pointing out on the the mainstream level, or maybe not even mainstream, that's the non-conspiracy level, they are conspiracies that these people will know about, and they're not going to change it. So maybe just take into, I'm not telling you what to do, but listening to me and my beliefs, some of you might be thinking, oh, that's just crazy. There's no way. But if there is something that I'm saying that is maybe a light switch goes off in your brain, maybe look into things. I'll happily send you some podcasts, some articles, some documentaries that will kind of expose the way the system is set up for these families or cabals to keep the power within, whether they're related. I think even I mentioned an example of during World War II, the king of Russia, the king of Germany, and the king of the UK were actual cousins, first cousins, and that kind of, even way back when it was monarchies, kings and queens that ruled the world, they're not just going to let that slide. So okay, now we have republics like America where it's families like the Clintons, the Bushes, the Trumps, the Kennedys. But when and I haven't looked into this, but I know it's a strong belief amongst the conspiracy uh, people that a lot of these people are related, and their bloodlines lead back to the King John. So if that's true, and I mean, if this is striking any bells with anyone, then look into it, because you're kind of wasting your time. You're going out there and voting, and I'm not taking that away from you. You do you. Everyone has a right to do that, but I just think we're being played for mugs. And with the things that we've mentioned here tonight, lowering the age, they're not willing to do the term limits because they know if they did, they would run out of family. We make jokes about it, but it's no fun. And I think something I was going to add before I pass the mic again is I've heard a lot about the COVID argument, and a lot of people that I listen to saying that when you live in America, you're quite lucky because if you're living in a state that passes a mandate or something, you can just move to another state. And I know it's easier said than done, just up in sticks and leaving to another state. But uh, how do you feel about that? Is there any, have you guys ever moved around or thought about it to suit, are you in the right state for your beliefs? And because here in the UK, we're landlocked, obviously, but immigrating to another country is a lot harder than just jumping over to another state. So what's your thoughts on that? Solid?
Um, if you're willing to move because you don't want to wear a mask, or get vaccinated, people don't have the money to do that, and I just think it's silly. Me, I've most of you all know that I am vax. I believe in it. I wear my mask and my gloves and all that other stuff, but to move, I think that's kind of drastic. And
No,
to me, the
not
only
just for the COVID. Sorry,
well, I
not
mean,
just for the COVID thing, just in general. Like if you're living in a state that's Republican and your mayor's Republican and he's passing all these Republican things, laws and things, like you could just move. Like, is that's
if I probably would think about it, but knowing me, I'm more the person who would get out there and, start knocking on doors to try to change it. I would not to say it just come out and say it in just a rough way. Say I would not let anybody run me out of town because of that. I would try to change it first before I left. So I think moving is a bit drastic, but then again, it's whatever floats somebody's boat. I mean, I don't know.
chill? Chill? Are you there, bud?
Yeah, I'm there. I was trying to follow some, and unfortunately, I got a phone call, so I didn't get the whole thing what Solid Blue said. So I'm sorry.
It was just a quick one before we go around the room one last time to wrap up. Is just I've heard a lot about America. It's a lot easier to move around the states, and is it something that you guys would consider if you were living in a Republican state and you were a Democrat? Would you move? If they started passing laws that you didn't agree with, whereas other countries, it's here in the UK we're landlocked, so it's a lot harder for us.
Well, I'm probably going to be living in another country at one point. In general, like I no book because it's just so much. It's just I don't know. It's more beneficial. I don't want to be in one place anyway. So yes, short answer yes. Definitely. And your point is very well taken on the elitist strategy to keep us all down here and their way and get their way. especially with the 16. I mean, I think really don't make no difference if you take the vote to 16. I mean, it would probably, I would say, people who go out vote be more. I mean, the country is still technically probably. It just gives, I would think, the conservatives more votes probably, which that's a smooth maneuver. you know, because I'm pretty sure like minorities already have a hard time voting sometimes because they feel like it don't affect them, which they have a point. For me, I tend to side with you, and I know Sala Blue don't, but she has a legitimate reason. I mean, and then I think it's more personal than just like factual in reference to like productivity. You know what I'm saying? But if you got your ancestors who given you the ability to vote or not vote, that's what some people sometimes fail to realize though when they get upset with it. Like they gave you the freedom. Freedom is freedom. They didn't give you freedom just so you can just you can do whatever you want to. You might disappoint them, but you still, the fact is you can do whatever you want to. At the end of the day, I think that's the thing, and but for me, moving in reference to your question, short answer, yes, I would definitely move somewhere if I felt like I couldn't take it. I felt like I didn't have enough representation. I'm doing my hardest I could, but I mean, typically, like with the voting now, I don't think it really matters. No matter where you at, things will go in place if you're not embedded in that society, making actual change. And if you are, sometimes it don't work. So it's just how it is.
Okay. And same question to you, Michael.
So I think, two different types of people. People like Solid Blue Sisters said that they wouldn't want to move. Instead, they'd try and take action and change anything that they disagreed with, which is great too. But what we are seeing, and I live in a Republican state in Tennessee. Okay, I'm from Florida, which is another. I'm sure Florida's probably known around the world now for all the stuff that Tennessee's been doing. And I think that's great. I don't know if the COVID restrictions. I know a lot of people moved to my city, but they didn't really move. They had houses down there, and then they were just spending more time down there to get away from restrictions up north in New York. But in my state now, in Tennessee, we have a lot of people coming from California and these other Democratic states. And I hate saying Democratic states, they just happen to be Democratic, but the ones that have really high taxes. And some people that are living like middle class or maybe lower middle class in California are coming here and living in higher end homes and living like kings because of the difference. There are certain things, and this is proven, that would cause people to move. And I think opportunity is a big one. If I own a business, can I move my business to Texas or Tennessee or Florida where we're not getting taxed so much because there's no state tax? That's a big one. That's actually in Biden's Build Back Better plan, where he says, okay, we're going to lower taxes for the lower class families and raise taxes on the rich. Actually, the biggest tax cut came in the form of a SALT tax, which is the state and local taxes. He was going to do an 800% increase in the amount that wealthy, and I say wealthy because they're the only ones that are itemizing the state and local tax that way, an 800% increase on the amount that you could deduct. And the reason behind that was because they wanted to try and incentivize people to stay in California and these blue states because they were being taxed so much. So they were actually giving the wealthy people a substantial larger tax break than they were the lower middle class individuals, to try and retain people. So yes, there are absolutely reasons why people do move out of certain states, but I think it's not so much. I don't know if wearing a mask and getting vaccinated really had that much of a say in it. But maybe if you had to get vaccinated for your job or you got fired and you could maybe go do the same thing in another state that wasn't making you do that, that would be a reason, right? Taxes is a reason, and just opportunity in general is a reason. Because there's always got to be a reason to move. If you don't have a reason to move, then most people don't move. What's the point in just moving to another state for nothing? I know some people like to change the scenery, but I think opportunity would be the reason for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, you're right. you know, the people that I listen to are usually American based, and I did hear that there was like a mass exodus of people leaving California maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and
Still,
then
yeah.
seemingly they were all moving to Texas, and you know the worries was that Texas would end up being a blue, well, not the worry, but I mean that was kind of going to happen if people were going to move from California to Texas, that Texas would end up being a blue state. So yeah, and then obviously with Florida and what's happening with the COVID stuff there, yeah, we do hear little snippets over here in the UK, and it is usually, you know, the main 2 or 3 states that we hear about. So you know, I'll go around the room. I'll just ask you all for your final comments. I know the show topic is you know, it should non-parents, but ultimately this was the show that I wanted. It's been very informative for me. I've got a lot of homework after what you guys have said, and ultimately that's what I'm all about. I want to learn more about, you know, politics and the way the world's run, and you know, the way that America's voting system is set up, and even, you know, this is getting me thinking about something I could do for a subject for my own show. Is like, I've always wondered, when did government begin? Like, when did the transition from kings and queens to government begin? And I'm actually embarrassed to say that I don't actually know. So that's something that I'm going to look into over the next few days, and maybe do a show. So this has been really great for me. So I'll go around the room and get your final words. But thanks, guys, for making this show a good experience, because Solid Blue handed the reins over, and I hope I've done it justice. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. So, Solid Blue, thanks. And what's your final thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think you did a great job, and I hope I pretty much kept my mouth shut in terms of letting you run your own show. So,
Yeah.
but in terms of my final thoughts, you know, we talked about a lot today, and Michael, you had a lot of great points, and Chill. I mean, everyone had great points, but I'm just going to wrap up just with my thing on voting. You know, again, you know, our people have gone through so much. We have gone through so much, and even with all the voting restrictions and the voting laws that have come out, one thing that I hope, you know, that a lot of these people who are making these laws don't realize, we're so used to standing in line. We will stand in line. We will stand in line. We will stand in line. And I grew up, you know, that voting was something that your the people who came before you, they fought and they died for. You know, they came over on the Middle Passage, you know, in chains, and the things that, you know, they did for us, and I take that to heart. I have family members who were lynched, you know. So like I said, I will vote for dog catcher. I will vote for, you know, I will vote for anything, because a family member of mine or a family member of someone who looks like me, they went through a lot of shit. They went through and are still going through crap just to vote. And I think that some groups take it for, you know, it's like, oh, it's just a vote. But for us, you know, it means something, and it bothers me when people who look like me don't vote. It bothers me when people like LeBron James, the first time that he voted was in 2020, because he didn't think that he needed to vote. Why? Because you had a shitload of money. You know, so I mean, but then again, I look at people like him. It's like, look at the people who came before you, who the shit that they had to go through. That, you know, you may have been the best person on your team, but you still had to go through the back door because of the color of your skin. So voter IDs and all this other stuff, it's like, you know, we just gone through so much. So again, that's all I have to say. But I'm always going to represent and respect where I came from and the people who came before me.
Okay. Chill. Final words.
Yeah. So yeah, that's I get that completely, and I could never tell Solid Blue that was a wrong. That's a wrong thing. For real, because I understand it, but I just some of that is just for me sentimental when it comes to the grand scheme of things. I feel like they want us to be passionate about those things, so we can be involved in those things, so we can't see the puppeteer above us to have us running around being emotional about those type of things. And that's why I be wanting us as a people, I don't care white, black, to see. Because if you're duping one demographic, you're probably duping another. You know what I'm saying? If you're skewing history in general and telling lies in general, it's whether whatever demographic it is unjust, and you're trying to manipulate us. And I ain't nobody's damn fool. You know what I'm saying? So that's my biggest point in there, in the matter of saying, hey, that's sentimentally, that's absolutely right. But I think that's a tool as well to make so we're so concentrated on that, so passionate about that, we don't look at what's right above our heads, like, we got you. You know what I'm saying? That's how you get got. They make sure you're passionate. They make sure you plug into whatever that is to get you out your game. It's kind of like, when you playing football, or, and everybody knows, you tap a black boy. If there's people who play football, you tap a black man on the butt, he about to get emotional. He don't play them games. Now, motherfucker, slap him on the butt. Now he pissed. Now he out of his game. So that's the last thing that I want to happen to anybody, because I think a lot of times what we do is, black folks got legitimate spots. I mean, but then I'm thinking, like, this ain't even just black. If I was, I don't care who it is. You look at this and tell me this just ain't unjust in general. I don't care who it is. Like, everybody should be pissed. Like, if I see, I don't care if they white, black, blue, green, alien, somebody getting abused, I'm helping them. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing. And so us kind of separate. It is separate, but still, we got to be able to recognize differences and come together on our wrongs, when the wrong is wrong and right is right. So it's an awesome show. Baa Ram, you did an awesome job, bro. You ain't got to worry about it. You did it like you've been here before, which you have. Mike, man, it's always good to hear from you, bro, and bring the other side. Everybody in the panel, man. This is an awesome show, awesome job.
And Michael, same to you. Last words.
Oh no, I mean, I agree with what Solid Blue Sister said, and I've always been told that, and I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, look, I've gone back, I've tracked my family back, a lot of them from Ireland, but on a few different sides, multiple that have fought in the Revolutionary War, fought for the Union Army at Gettysburg, fought in World War II. A lot of them were shot, blown up, killed. I have an extensive history of that in my family, and going back to what she said, everyone has a reason, and a lot of people sacrifice something in different forms. Like, it could be like what she said with the slaves being brought over. It could be they fought. A lot of black people fought in the Union, in the Civil War, to end, and give slaves rights in the South. And there's a lot of reasons and a lot of blood that was spilled to, when it may not seem that we have all the freedoms we think we do, or that it's not run the way that we think we do, it's still, people are still, into this day, fighting to try and get it to where we want it to be, And so I think that voting is something that it is your right to not vote, because, like, in Australia, my girlfriend, you get fined if you don't vote. We don't have that here. Why? Because we, truly hold that belief that it's up to you if you want to, but it's still one of those things that you should do it just out of a respect for the people that fought to, give you that right. And, it goes back to, like, the Kaepernick thing. He had a reason that he took a knee for the national anthem, right? But a lot of people didn't like that, because it is his right. And I say this all the time. It's his right, whether you agree with him or not, to do that and protest it. But I just don't agree with him, in the way that he did it, just because of everything that was represented. But it's his right and his freedom. And I'm glad that here in the United States that we have those rights to be able to protest things like that, or be able to not do something and be forced into doing different things. So, the voting is something that I'll always go vote. It's something I think everyone should take advantage of. And I think that regardless of the outcome of the 2020 elections, the good thing that came out of it is we had the highest voter turnout probably in world history. And there's no doubt about that. So, that's kind of my last thought. And I appreciate the show. Ball, you did a great job. And I think this is the third day in a row I'm on it. So I do enjoy this show. You guys are way better at operating this than I am my show. If any of you were on that last night, you would see that. But yeah, no, thank you.
No, thank you guys, and I'll just pass over to Solid Blue to wrap up the show. But thanks again.
Well, first, I want to give you this. 'Cause I think you did. So I think you did a really, really good job. And and I'm listening to this, and I'm listening to Michael, I'm listening to Chill, and even what Shy Lady said, when we were on the show about freedom of speech and what have you. I'm looking forward to the show that you and I are doing Saturday. And I'm looking forward to it because, first of all, we'll everyone will be able to see us, and you can see facial reactions and things like that. But Ba, you did a really, really good job. Everyone got their point across, whatever. And I still think that you should start your own show, and I will give you another opportunity in the meantime if you want to do another show. But I think you did a really great job.
Well, thank you. I am thinking about it. I mean, I have the time, and for me, it was always just about, I'm not the best at talking by myself. So if I ever started a show and no one entered, I'd probably just end it. But having guys like you on the panel to bounce back and forth with, there's nothing better for me. I love having these conversations and learning, and for me, it's just an amazing show. So. I'm a bit gutted that I miss out on the night shows, but I'm about to start a job on Monday where I'll be night shift 1 week out of the month. So I'll hopefully get to join in some of the nightly shows. Michael Key, I think I miss yours a lot because of that, because I'm probably sleeping when you're on. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Saturday, and the Chill and Michael, you'll be there, and that'll be a great show as well. So again, thanks, and I really appreciate the honor of hosting this show.
Okay. And one thing that I want to say to Michael, I apologize. I meant to get on your show last night, but I am a neighborhood watch captain, and we had a meeting. But I heard
the show. We actually were talking about some of the same stuff, like people brought up the system of the United States and the Constitution. There's disagreement there, but it went down a road between 2 or 3 people there that I really respect this, because you and then Bob did a really good job today. You are really good at running the show, letting people talk, but not having people talk over each other. I have not figured that out. But one thing I've said from the beginning is I don't care if it's a racist person, if it's someone I don't agree with, whatever. I want to give everyone a voice on the show because I respect everyone's right to say whatever they want in the freedom of speech, right? And I'm trying, because after last night, I don't really like the insults, and it kind of got out of hand. And I really didn't respect what happened last night, and I need to figure out how to mitigate that without going against, letting people have a voice either. But I guess
Michael, I'm going to tell you how. I mean, and some people may not like it because some people have said that I'm too strict. Whatever, you can say whatever you want. You want to drop the f bomb, whatever. That's fine. The only word, and I guess I am going to say this word. The only word that you cannot. I don't like the word bitch. Okay, I do not like that word. But I tell people up front, you can say whatever you want. Keep it respectful. Yeah. You do not have to. Insult anyone. Mm-hmm. If you do, I'm kicking you off. And when I say I'm kicking you off, I'm not giving you a warning. I'm kicking you off, and you're not coming back. Yeah. So if you just give those guidelines, because you can disagree with people. I mean, we disagree here. Yeah. But we were able to talk. But to have people talk over each other, whatever, I mean, it's just crazy because no one gets their voice heard because everybody's screaming and hollering.
Mhm.
So if you put those guidelines in, people will respect you, and they won't do it, especially if they know that you will. I'm not going to have it, and that's why I say, please try not to interrupt someone. I know at times, you want to interrupt, so I try to go back to people, whatever. But for the most part, the name calling and stuff, nope. And I don't care if you're name calling a Democrat or a Republican, your mama, your daddy, whatever. Nope, it's not going to happen. Not on this show.
Yeah, no, and I respect that. And last night was really the first time I've ever had anything get out of hand. I know Chris Unplugged was in there last night, and it went down a bad road. It wasn't anything I said. It was between two other people, but I'll get it handled and, figure it out. It just, it is hard when you believe that everyone should have a voice and that everyone, I'm one of those people. I think you should be able to say whatever you want. Be aware of the consequences, obviously, right? If you go and start saying a bunch of racist stuff, obviously there's going to be some fallout to that. But, if they say it, they say it. And it's up to how everyone else wants to react to it is the consequences. But I'm not going to shut anyone up. But then when you start insulting people and talking over people and demeaning people is a little bit different, and that's where I started having issues last night. And, but learning experience too.
Yeah,
Right,
it
Mike.
is.
And so now like the insults is probably when it gets to. I mean, you want freedom of speech is different. Like it's still your show, right?
Yeah.
And although you want to be, you ain't really filter nobody just to say it. Could you just not be insulting? You know what I'm saying? That's not really a real filter. I mean, it is, but it ain't. You know what I mean? It's just could you just keep it respectful? Just when we disagree, it ain't nothing wrong with to say that, bro, and keep it at that. Keep it stern. And so typically they'll understand. Like you understand when you come to Solid Blue Show. She don't play that. You gon' at least be respectful. You can hate everybody in here, but just don't be out here just being super. And that's all it is. And then we take our time. We typically take one at a time. And that's just a format that you stick to. Remind everybody. Take out your notepad on your phone. Right here. I use my notepad, so I can go back. I'll read it. I'll reference it. So when I come back to say something, I'll reference that. Get a pen and paper. Write it down, and a lot of people, they would be so urgent to speak, they gonna stay and they gonna just chill out until they get their turn to speak, bro, because they want to be a part of the show.
Yeah.
And one other thing, and what Chris said, just ask people to, when you're not speaking, please mute. Number one, I don't want to hear the background noise, and number two, just give the other person the opportunity to speak. You had your chance, give the next person a chance. And that's why I always go around the room and say, does anybody else have anything they want to add, whatever, because it is giving you your last word.
Absolutely.
So, but Bob, do you have anything else you want to add before I play the music?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, everyone, thank you very much. Tomorrow is Thursday, which is my fun show. Not to get so serious, but on Saturday, Baa Ram and I will be joined by Chill Will, Michael Key, Jester. Who am I leaving out?
I think we still have to get a sixth.
No, Pook.
Oh, Pook, yeah.
Pook, yes. And we are going to be talking about gun control. So again, this show is going to be streamed live on YouTube and on Twitch. So if you guys want to join in, it will be at 12 noon Pacific time. If you guys want to join in and have your comments, read or whatever, and if you have any questions of anybody on the panel, and again, we do want to make it more of a debate. So hopefully we will do that. So once again, Bob, do you have anything you want to add?
No, just thanks again. So it's been a great show, and I'll see you all on Saturday.
Okay, so thank you very much. Speak your truth. Go where the wind takes you, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye. Michael, thank you very much for joining 3 days in a row. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Chill, thank you. And we will work on the whole thing not being so formal or whatever. Say, hey, dude,
No,
what's up?
don't pay no me no bad, Solid Blue. I just give y'all a hard time.
I know, but I am going to try.
Yeah, I'm just giving y'all a hard time. I just know because it seems like it's straight to the point. I feel awkward. I feel like, yeah, let's get to it, buddy. Come on. So that's all good though. I get it. I'll just give y'all a hard time. Because I feel like I see y'all every day. I want to be that coworker that just always like, you have a conversation one day about your kids, and the next day be like, hey, how are you? Like, just that's all. But it's just me.
Okay.
Awesome job, y'all.
Let's see. Okay. I'm looking at somebody asked a question. I don't know what the question is. All right. Well, Grid Talk, Frankie, thank you for your podring today, and Juju, thank you. And Dragnov, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you for showing up and coming. And Chris Unplugged, thank you. Katisha, thank you. Feisty, Jan, Juju, thank you for being the admin. Okay, y'all. I hope to see you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Bye.